911, what's the address of the emergency? 911.
I need help. My husband.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
I need help. I need help. My husband was shot. I need help.
It's New Year's Eve, 2018, St. Joseph Township, Michigan. Across the country, people are packed into living rooms and city squares counting down the final seconds of the year. Champagne is being poured, children are being lifted onto shoulders, horns are blowing, and in a quiet residential driveway just off Lemon Creek Road, United States Army Sergeant Tyrone Hassel III, 23 years old, home on holiday leave, is walking toward his father's front door. This young man had survived a military deployment to South Korea. He had earned his sergeant's stripes faster than most men twice his age. He had built a life, a career, a family. He had no idea that the threat to his life was on any foreign base, not in any combat zone. It was standing in that driveway with him. A 911 call begins to play, a woman's voice, breathless, crying, fragmented with grief. That call was placed by his wife, Kemia Hassel.
Okay, and tell me exactly what happened.
My husband bought us some food, and he left out, and me and my son were eating, and I just heard gunshots. And I put myself in the room, and I came outside, and my husband was on the ground.
And when the phone call ended and the police arrived, she kept performing. Here is the question that should stop you completely. What does it take to stand over the body of the man you married, call for help you know is already too late, and cry on command? Before this video ends, you will hear about a 56-minute conversation between a grieving father and the man convicted of killing his son. What was said in that room, and what was finally admitted, will stay with you long after this screen goes dark. Welcome to True Crime Unveiled 247, where silence is broken and hidden truths are exposed. To every subscriber who has been with us, thank you for standing with this community. May you and every person you love always remain safe. If this is your first time here, before we go any further, take a moment to subscribe. Not simply for the content, but to become part of a community that believes every victim deserves to have their complete story told, without compromise and without apology. Your support is what keeps this channel running, and what allows us to continue uncovering the disturbing, emotional, and eye-opening cases the world too often moves past. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and let us uncover the truth together. Today's case, the murder of United States Army Sergeant Tyrone Hassel III. Before we go back to the beginning, understand what you are about to hear. Tyrone Hassel III was a decorated United States Army sergeant. He was 23 years old. He was home on holiday leave, and he was shot 5 times, twice in the head, in his own father's driveway on New Year's Eve, while fireworks covered the sound of every single shot. The woman who called 911 was his wife of 18 months. She had already received $100,000 of his $400,000 military life insurance payout before investigators put handcuffs on her wrists. The man who drove to that driveway and pulled the trigger had made the trip from Georgia to Michigan with the same intention 5 times before that night, and turned back each time. The 6th time, he finished it. And the first real crack in this case did not come from forensic evidence, digital records, or surveillance cameras. It came from an elderly man on Gerald Street who had been sitting in his living room watching television, with the shades open. How does a soldier who survived overseas deployment come home to be executed steps from his father's front door? And how did the person responsible stand at his funeral and keep the act going? That is exactly what we are going to answer. Drop in the comments right now if you believe military families and soldiers deserve stronger legal protections. Let's see how this community responds. To understand what was lost on New Year's Eve 2018, you have to understand where Tyrone Hassel III started. He was born on August 23, 1995, in Benton Harbor, Michigan. If you are not familiar with Benton Harbor, it is a city that has spent decades on the wrong end of nearly every economic indicator in the state. High poverty, high unemployment, a community where the odds are stacked against you before you ever reach high school. Tyrone beat every one of those odds. He graduated with honors from Benton Harbor High School in 2013. He earned a Horatio Alger Scholarship, a nationally recognized award given to students who have overcome genuine adversity to achieve academic excellence. He enrolled at Grand Valley State University to study mechanical engineering. But something pulled at him that a classroom could not satisfy. In February 2015, Tyrone Hassel III walked into a United States Army recruiting office and enlisted. What followed was a trajectory that turned heads. He climbed through the ranks at a rate that outpaced soldiers with years more experience. By his early 20s, he was a sergeant, and the people who served alongside him noticed. On May 17, 2017, he married Kemia Hassel in a ceremony surrounded by their families. The couple settled near Fort Stewart in Hinesville, Georgia, where Kemia served as a truck driver and Tyrone worked as a wheel mechanic. To the people around them, they were young, successful, and clearly in love. Early 2018, a Super Bowl party. Friends who were there later recalled Tyrone sitting close to Kemia the entire night, his arm around her, kissing her on the cheek, the way people do when they are not performing affection but simply feeling it. Those same friends used the words young love when they described what they saw. They had no idea those would also be some of the last peaceful images of that marriage. Tyrone Hassel III's father, Tyrone Jr., had watched his son clear every hurdle this world put in front of him. He wasn't simply watching a successful soldier build a career. He was watching the boy he raised grow into the man he had always known was there. He has said in interviews since that he was not just losing a son that night in December, he was losing the person who was supposed to become his best friend. That is what Kemia Hassel and Jeremy Kuehler decided was worth $400,000. While Tyrone was building something, Jeremy Kuehler was watching it. Kuehler was 24 years old, originally from Chicago, Illinois. He held the rank of specialist and served in the same unit as Kemia Hassel at Fort Stewart. He was also married at the time, though he would later claim he and his wife had already been heading toward divorce before anything began with Kemia. The relationship between Kuehler and Kemia started with small, ordinary things. He did not have a vehicle, and Kemia gave him rides to and from work. That was the beginning. Then came the gas station. Kuehler filling her tank, offering to buy her food. A minor gesture, except Kemia's reaction stayed with him. According to Kuehler's own account, she seemed genuinely surprised. She told him her husband didn't even do that. That one sentence opened a door. What followed was a slow escalation that both of them allowed to continue, through daily proximity at Fort Stewart, through conversations that moved from casual to personal, and then through something that crossed every line a married soldier could cross. By February 2018, both Kemia and Kuehler had deployed to Camp Casey in South Korea, a 9-month rotation that was supposed to be a professional milestone, a shared chapter in what looked like a military marriage moving forward. Tyrone was also deployed during this period, and while he was focused on his service, his career, and his family's future, his wife and a man from their own unit were communicating through Snapchat, choosing that platform deliberately because messages disappear. Because there would be no record. Because they believed no one would ever know. They were wrong about that. But by the time investigators figured it out, Tyrone Hassel III was already dead. At what point do you think Tyrone deserved to know that something had gone wrong in his marriage? Were there signs that simply never reached him? Or was Kemia that precise in keeping them hidden? Tell us what you think in the comments below. An affair, by itself, could have ended in divorce. It could have ended in paperwork, in custody arrangements, in two people going separate directions. That is the path most people take when a marriage collapses. Kemia Hassel and Jeremy Kuehler did not take that path. At some point during the South Korea deployment, investigators believe it was during those 9 months at Camp Casey, the conversations between them changed. The questions stopped being about their feelings and started being about logistics. About what stood between them and the life they wanted. What stood between them was Tyrone Hassel III, and they decided to remove him. The plan, as prosecutors would later lay out in court, was straightforward in its brutality. Kuehler would kill Tyrone. Kemia would collect the $400,000 military life insurance policy. They would be together. Cuellar had even spoken to people about raising Tyrone and Kemia's young son, a toddler the family called Chunk, as his own child. Kemia's role in the operation was intelligence. She knew Tyrone's schedule, his location, his plans. She tracked his movements and passed that information to Cuellar. She was, in every practical sense, feeding a target to a shooter. Cuellar, for his part, began acquiring weapons. In October 2018, a fellow soldier named Golston sold him a 9mm Ruger SR9 handgun with 4 magazines. In December 2018, Cuellar purchased a Glock 23 in .40 caliber. He was not collecting firearms casually. He was preparing. And here's the detail that should make you pause. Cuellar did not drive to Michigan once. He made that trip with the intention of killing Tyrone Hassel III 6 separate times. 6 times he got in his black Chevrolet Impala. 6 times he made the drive north from Georgia. And 5 times he turned around and went back. What stopped him those 5 times? Investigators never fully established. What changed on the 6th? That answer came later from Cuellar himself. And it had nothing to do with a change of heart. Tyrone Hassel III came home for the holidays in December 2018. He was on leave, he was with his father, he was present with his son Chunk. By every account available, he was a man glad to be home, relaxed, happy, unguarded in the way people are when they believe they are safe. He had no idea that Kemia was in contact with Cuellar throughout this period, that she was providing his location, that the holiday trip home had been factored into a timeline someone else was managing. On the night of December 31, 2018, the information Kemia passed to Cuellar was precise. Tyrone was at his father's house. She knew where he would be and when. And that night, according to what Cuellar later told Tyrone's father directly, something else happened. Cuellar and Kemia had an exchange. She pulled back. Whether she tried to end the plan, end the relationship, or simply got cold that night, Cuellar interpreted it as rejection. He had driven from Georgia to Michigan for the 6th time. He had a loaded weapon. And the woman he had done all of this for had just pushed him away. What happened next took less than a minute. Just before midnight, as St. Joseph Township lit up with fireworks and the neighborhood filled with the noise of a new year arriving, 5 gunshots were fired in a driveway off Lemon Creek Road. The sound folded seamlessly into the celebration around it. Neighbors heard it. Most assumed it was part of the night. Nobody called it in. Knowing that Cuellar had made that drive 5 times before and stopped, do you think there was ever a version of this story where he walks away for good? Or was the outcome always going to be the same? Tell us in the comments. The clock was approaching midnight. Tyrone Hassel III stepped out into the cold Michigan air and walked up his father's driveway. The sky above St. Joseph Township was already breaking open with light, neighbors launching fireworks, the neighborhood alive with the sound of a new year arriving. It was loud, it was festive, it was the perfect cover. A figure was waiting. What followed took seconds. 5 shots. The first and second struck his face and neck. A third hit his right shoulder. The 4th and 5th were to his head. One of them fired from between 1 and 3 feet away, directly to the forehead. The medical examiner's autopsy confirmed all 5 wounds. Forensic analysts who later examined the evidence would leave no room for interpretation. This was not a robbery. It was not a random act. Every shot placement pointed to one conclusion. Tyrone Hassel III was executed in his father's driveway while fireworks masked every sound. The shooter walked away. He got into his black Chevrolet Impala and pointed it south toward Georgia. And less than 2 minutes later, Kemia Hassel called 911. Her voice on that recording is fractured, desperate, the sound of a woman destroyed by sudden loss.
Investigators say 22-year-old Kemia Hassel was having an affair with a man named Jeremy Cuellar. She allegedly gave Cuellar the go-ahead to ambush her husband late New Year's Eve.
I would never think about killing my husband.
While police were hard at work investigating the murder, Kemia Hassel was busy posting on Facebook. Last Wednesday, just days before her arrest, she posted how her husband would have been proud she made the dean's list. In another, Kemia laments about being left with the couple's soon-to-be 2-year-old son. What am I supposed to do, she asks. She even posted pictures of the man she allegedly had murdered proposing to her.
Sudden loss. She told the dispatcher she had found her husband. She said she did not know what had happened. She performed every beat of that call with precision. But while that call was being recorded, while dispatchers were routing emergency services to Lemon Creek Road, Tyrone Hassel III was bleeding into the snow of his father's driveway. And the man Kemia had been texting his location to all night was already miles away, driving in the dark. Paramedics arrived and began working immediately. Tyrone was loaded and rushed to Lakeland Hospital in St. Joseph, just minutes from the scene. What happened next inside that hospital is one of the most devastating details of this entire case. Ashanti Hassel, Tyrone's stepmother, was working her late shift at Lakeland Hospital that night. She was there when the paramedics came through the doors. She saw the team moving fast. She saw one of them on top of the patient performing compressions. And then, as the gurney moved past her, she saw his face. She already knew before anyone told her. In her own words, later shared in an interview with ABC's 2020, "I could see his eyes. I knew because I see it too much not to know." Dr. Hammer came out of the trauma bay and stood in the hallway for a moment. Then he told her they had worked on him longer than they usually do. Then he said, "I'm sorry." Outside that hospital, Kemia Hassel was still performing, still the grieving wife, still the widow in crisis. Inside, a father was about to receive the call that would end the version of his life he had spent 23 years building. New Year's Eve in St. Joseph Township means gunfire. It always does. Residents hear it every year. Fireworks mixed with celebratory shots, noise folding into noise until nobody can separate one sound from another. That fact worked in Jeremy Quillar's favor in the hours immediately following the murder. Nobody flagged the shots. Nobody called them in. The crime scene sat undisturbed in the cold while the neighborhood celebrated. When investigators did begin working the case, the early days were frustrating. Lead after lead produced nothing. Betrayal seemed to go cold almost as fast as it was picked up. Tyrone Hassel Jr. was watching all of this from the outside. He watched his daughter-in-law move through the grieving process publicly. The tears, the exhaustion, the fragile widow who needed support. He believed it. When Kemia urged him to leave the police station and go home during the initial investigation, he interpreted it as concern. He thought she was trying to protect him from a painful process. He later understood what she was actually doing.
I would never think about killing
She needed him
my husband.
out of the way. The first $100,000 of Tyrone's $400,000 military life insurance policy had already been released to her. She was working to secure the remaining $300,000 before investigators built enough of a case to stop her. The break the case needed did not come from technology. It did not come from forensics or digital surveillance. It came from an elderly man on Gerald Street, 1 block away from the crime scene, who had been sitting in his living room watching television that night with his window shades open. He had noticed something that did not fit. A black Chevrolet Impala parked in front of a vacant home that had a for sale sign out front. Parked there on New Year's Eve at an hour that made no sense. He remembered it. He reported it. That single observation, an old man, a window, a car that should not have been there, became the thread that would eventually pull apart everything Kemia Hassel and Jeremy Quillar had constructed. January 11th, 2019. 11 days had passed since Tyrone Hassel III was killed in his father's driveway. His funeral was scheduled for the following morning. His family was preparing to bury him. At approximately 11 o'clock that morning, a call came into the St. Joseph County Police Department. A woman's voice, a distinct Jamaican accent. The call was placed from somewhere near a military installation in Georgia. She did not give her name. Investigators have never publicly confirmed her identity to this day, but what she told them was enough. Within hours, law enforcement had pulled the thread she gave them, and the entire structure began to come apart. License plate reader data placed Quillar's black Chevrolet Impala in the area of St. Joseph Township on New Year's Eve. When investigators searched that vehicle, they recovered 9mm ammunition and a matching magazine. When they executed a search warrant on Quillar's home on Robin Hood Drive in Georgia, they found additional Ruger magazines, 9mm bullets, and a fully loaded Glock 23 .40 caliber handgun hidden inside a closet. The fellow soldier who had sold Queller the weapons, Golston, confirmed the transactions. The 9mm Ruger SR9 sold in October, the Glock in December, both purchases documented, both connected directly to Queller. Forensic analysts then did what the evidence demanded. They compared the spent shell casings recovered from the snow-covered driveway on Lemon Creek Road to the ammunition found in Queller's possession. They matched. The 9mm Ruger SR9 that fired the shots that killed Tyrone Hassel III was never found. It has not been recovered to this day. Queller took it, and wherever he put it, it has stayed there. At 8:48 in the evening on January 11th, less than 12 hours before her husband's funeral was set to begin, investigators brought Kemia Hassel back in for questioning. This time was different. Tyrone Jr. was asked to wait in the lobby. Kemia was walked into an interrogation room alone. For 12 days she had held it together. 12 days of playing the widow. 12 days of tears and condolences and standing at the center of a grief she had engineered. It ended in that room. The interrogation was recorded. On camera, Kemia Hassel admitted the affair with Jeremy Queller. She admitted that she had been providing Queller with her husband's location throughout the holiday period. She admitted that she knew what he was there to do, and then she said in her own words, "I'm just as guilty as he is." At dawn on January 12, 2019, as the Hassel family was preparing to lay Tyrone to rest, Kemia Hassel was formally arrested and booked into Berrien County Jail. News alerts hit phones across the region before the funeral service even began. She had already received $100,000 of the insurance payout. She never saw the remaining $300,000. The anonymous call that shattered this case came from a woman near a military base in Georgia. Investigators have never confirmed who she was or what motivated her to pick up that phone. Who do you think made that call, and what do you think pushed her to do it? Tell us in the comments. July 2019. 7 months after Tyrone Hassel III was shot 5 times in his father's driveway, Berrien County Courthouse became the place where the people responsible for it would finally have to answer for what they had done. Kemia Hassel's trial moved fast. 3 days, 23 witnesses. The prosecution laid out the forensic evidence, the digital trail, the weapons purchases, the insurance policy, the Snapchat communications, and Kemia's own recorded confession, in which she looked into a camera and said she was just as guilty as the man who pulled the trigger. The jury did not take long. Kemia Hassel was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She will die inside a Michigan correctional facility. Jeremy Queller watched that verdict come down and understood exactly what a trial would produce for him. The license plate data, the shell casings, the weapons, the testimony from Golston, and the forensic match between his ammunition and the casings pulled from the snow on Lemon Creek Road left him nothing to argue. On July 29, 2019, he entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder. On September 23, 2019, he stood in that same Berrien County Courthouse for sentencing. And that is when LaShonda Jones, Tyrone's mother, stood up and faced him directly. She told the court that she plays videos on her phone just to hear her son's voice, that Jeremy Queller does not deserve to walk the surface of this earth, that she wants him to spend every single remaining day of his life suffering behind bars for what he chose to do. Jeremy Queller, who had held himself together through every prior court appearance, broke completely. He wept. The judge sentenced him to 65 to 90 years in a Michigan state prison. Neither of them accepted the outcome. Kemia Hassel filed for a retrial. Her legal strategy this time was to rewrite Tyrone's legacy entirely, to introduce battered partner syndrome, to claim that she had been in an abusive relationship and had been living under threat. She attempted to position herself not as a conspirator, but as a victim. The Michigan Court of Appeals reviewed her case and affirmed her conviction in 2022. The court was direct in its reasoning. The murder plot had been constructed months before any alleged abuse had supposedly occurred. A conspiracy plan that far in advance cannot be reframed as an act of self-preservation. Her claim of imminent danger was, in the court's own assessment, incredible. Tyrone's legacy survived her attempt to destroy it. Jeremy Cuellar took a different route. He attempted to withdraw his guilty plea entirely, arguing that his defense attorney had improperly influenced his decision to plead. The judge denied the request without hesitation. Cuellar escalated to the Michigan Supreme Court. The Supreme Court declined to intervene. Every door they tried to open stayed closed. What happened next is something that does not fit neatly into any part of this story, and yet it may be the most important moment in all of it. Tyrone Hassel Jr. went to the jail where Jeremy Cuellar was being held. He sat down across from the man convicted of killing his son. And for 56 minutes, he stayed in that room. Cuellar apologized. More than once, he told Tyrone Jr. directly that his motivation had been love, that he had not done this for the insurance money, that what he felt for Kemia had driven every decision he made. He confirmed what investigators had established, that he had driven from Georgia to Michigan 6 separate times with the intention of killing Tyrone, and that 5 times he had turned back. He told Tyrone Jr. that it was Kemia's rejection of him on the night of December 31st, after he had already made the drive, already had the weapon, already committed everything to this plan, that finally pushed him past the point of turning around again. He had come all that way. She had pushed him away. And Tyrone Hassel III paid for that with his life. What Tyrone Jr. took away from those 56 minutes, whether any part of it brought him anything close to peace, is something only he can answer. Fellow soldiers who testified during the trial stated plainly that Cuellar's real driving forces were jealousy and the prospect of financial gain. The evidence built over months of investigation supports that conclusion far more than any declaration of love. But Tyrone Jr. sat in that room anyway. He listened, and then he walked out. If you were in his position, if you were the father in that chair, could you have done it? Could you have sat across from that man and listened to his explanation? Tell us in the comments what you would have done. There is a child at the center of all of this. Tyrone Hassel IV, the little boy his family calls Chunk, was not yet 2 years old when his father was killed. He had no say in any of it. He did not choose his parents, their choices, or the morning he woke up and his father was simply gone. Today, he lives with his maternal grandmother in Georgia. The Hassel family remains part of his life, though the distance and the circumstances have made that connection difficult, mostly limited to FaceTime calls between a boy growing up and a family trying to hold on to him across the miles. He is growing up in the wreckage of decisions made before he was old enough to form a single memory of the man he lost. Tyrone Hassel Jr. raised a son in Benton Harbor, Michigan, a city that did not make survival easy. He watched that son earn honors, win scholarships, choose military service, and rise to sergeant before the age of 23. He was not watching a success story from a distance. He was watching his best friend take shape. He has spoken in every interview since with the quiet devastation of a man who knows exactly what was stolen from him. Not just a son, but a future that had been earned brick by brick against every odd it faced. That future was not taken by combat. It was not taken by accident or illness or the random cruelty that life sometimes delivers without explanation. It was taken by the 2 people Tyrone trusted completely, the woman he married and the man she chose over him. No verdict restores what was lost. No sentence fills the space that Tyrone Hassel III left behind. What remains are the videos LaShonda Jones plays on her phone just to hear his voice. The FaceTime calls between a little boy and a grandfather trying to keep a connection alive, and a father who sat in a jail visiting room for 56 minutes looking for something, anything, that might begin to make sense of it. Some questions will never have satisfying answers. Why wasn't divorce enough? Was the life of a husband, a father, a decorated soldier truly worth less in their calculation than a $400,000 payout? And the child Cuellar claimed he wanted to raise as his own. Did he ever truly mean that? Or was Chunk simply another piece of a story he constructed to make himself feel justified? The soldiers who served alongside him and testified in court did not hesitate with their answer. They said it plainly: jealousy and money. The evidence built across months of investigation points in the same direction. If Tyrone had known the truth, if somehow the information had reached him before that driveway, before that night, before those 5 shots, would he have walked away from the marriage? Would he have fought to keep his family together? We will never know. That choice was taken from him before he ever had the chance to make it. Drop a in the comments for Tyrone Hassel III. Let this comment section become the tribute he deserves, from people who never met him but understand exactly what was lost. If this case moved you, if you believe every victim's story deserves to be told fully and without compromise, subscribe to this channel, turn on your notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Our next case is already in production, and I can tell you now, it is just as heavy. Until next time, stay safe, and remember this: silence protects the wrong people.